We need a break, Caleb. And I think Steve Hamer is going to bring it right now. Look at that guy. He looks great. Steve, how are you?
Doing really well. Can you hear me?
I got you perfect. Can you hear me?
Perfect. I can. Yes.
Brother, it's one of those mornings.
I've often heard that a good craftsman never blames his tools. So I don't know if that's the exception or the norm for me, but I got a new laptop and I don't know how to use it. So I apologize.
No, that is understandable. Like I was saying earlier, Caleb's locked himself out of the house. My thermostat's broke and we're off. We're using a hotspot.
Let's go.
We'll see how this goes. All right. So has Mike Keith called you yet and said we got to make this happen?
No, I've had conversations with him, but they have not been akin to the spot that will be opening up, towards the end of the season. I'm hoping and praying that I get an opportunity to be the full-time guy, as I would covet that. I love broadcasting. I love being around the guys and all of the ancillary things that come along with being a color guy on radio. So I'm hoping that opportunity comes to fruition for sure.
All right, you got my vote, no question about it. I'm voting for Steve Hamer right now. And then what's weird is Mike might not have a color guy. I know, an analyst. I don't know if you guys remember, but I'm old. John Ward didn't for basketball.
Yeah,
and
he did okay.
Yeah, he did all right. But I would want a guy to be an analyst. There's no question about it. All right, so let's jump into this Tennessee basketball team. As Caleb, I know that you and I discussed beforehand some of the players that are key, but I just want to start, Steve, with we asked the question earlier in the program. Do you take more from as far as determining how far this team goes in March, how championship worthy they are? Do you take more from the loss to Kentucky or the win against Florida?
I take more from the win against Florida, simply because, when you lose to Kentucky at home, which by the way, I don't know that very many people realize that Tennessee is 56-5 over the last few years here at the Food City Center, which is absolutely astounding. It's phenomenal. By the way, a couple of those losses have come at the hands of Kentucky. Three of those losses, actually. We lost a buzzer beater against Missouri, and then we lost to South Carolina just a couple of years ago on our home floor. So that's it for the last few years. So for us to circle the wagons and to be able to come together close-knit without Zakai Ziegler, without a flu-ridden Igor Milicic Jr., and to dispatch and dispose of a team that beat you just a few weeks ago by 30 plus, you in turn take that and you win by 20. After it was pretty close at half, I believe the score was 24-21 at half. Still anybody's ball game, but you had the dedication, the tenacity, the intestinal fortitude, if you will, to put that team away and put your stamp on a season. Not only did that resonate to me, obviously it resonated and registered to a lot of voters across the country, because we rose up to 4, right? After losing on your home floor to Kentucky just a few days prior to that, 7 guys in scholarship in the game, you rose up to number 4 in the country over beating Florida. So I think that I take more from a win against Florida than I did from a loss against Kentucky, because we can talk about all the particulars with Kentucky, man. We didn't shoot the ball well. 11 out of 45, that's not going to cut it. We turned the ball over time after time. Kentucky did not score for the last 5 minutes of that ball game. 5 minutes. So the Wildcats did everything that they could to give us that basketball game, and we just could not take advantage. We couldn't score. That being said, chips are down. We did everything that we needed to against Florida and walked away with a victory.
Steve, I am going to get into the particulars a little bit, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Because I want to ask specifically about Chaz Lanier. There were red flags to me, 2 red flags I just want to bring up. In Tennessee's loss at Auburn, Rick Barnes did not call the game-winning shot for Chaz Lanier. he trusted Zakai Ziegler in that moment more. And then against Kentucky, I know people were mad at Zakai for shooting so many threes, but it felt like I noticed a couple of times Chaz Lanier took himself out of the game almost and just stayed in the corner. Then Zakai's not in the game on Saturday against Florida, and Chaz Lanier, to his credit, meets the moment, takes over, goes, I think, 5 of 9 from 3. Is there an issue right now with Chaz Lanier not being aggressive and willing enough to take over games when Tennessee needs him to do that? And did he finally do that against Florida on Saturday?
I don't think so. I don't think that there is an issue as much as I think there is a very steep learning curve for Chaz Lanier. When you go back to Northern Florida, he didn't see the likes of Janai Broome at Northern Florida. He didn't see the likes of the guards in which he's seeing on a night to night basis here in the Southeastern Conference. He didn't see that. And it has taken him a while to adjust to the physicality, to the speed, to the aggression of SEC style play. And I get where you're saying. Don't get me wrong. Look, I see that he has struggled. I see the team as a whole has struggled. Guys, up until the Florida game, do you have any idea what Tennessee was shooting in SEC games alone from the three? We were shooting 23%.
Oh,
wow. From the three in SEC games alone. That's prior to Florida, right? And it didn't get much better, right? Not a whole lot better. So with that being said, I think Chaz, and I'm certainly hoping that this is going to be the case. If you go back to last year and you look at Dalton Connect, he had a little bit of a lull when it got to SEC play. The book was out. How are we going to guard him? How are we going to, see him coming off screens? Are we going to trail? Are we going to go underneath? We're going to go over top. We're going to help. We're going to hedge. We're going to play gap-heavy defense. And it took Dalton Connect just a little bit to make sure that he adjusted to the style of play. That's not the case with Chaz. It's taking a little bit longer with Chaz. But I tend to think that someone of his caliber, that's such a great shooter, will make the adjustments eventually. We got a great Hall of Fame coach who I'm telling you, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. Chaz, if you will come off of those screens that we're setting for you, if you'll get your feet ready before you catch the ball, you will be a better shooter. Furthermore, if you'll get your feet ready before you catch the ball coming off the screen and you'll utilize a head and shoulders fake, you'll draw fouls and you'll get to the line. And once you get to the line, you'll see the ball go through, and now you'll be ready to play. If he does little things like that, and I'm starting to see it a little bit more and more, I think Chaz is going to be okay.
Man, I'm sorry, they were expecting more than okay, Steve.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. We all are. We all are. And I think it was never more evident when your head coach comes out publicly and says, that's what we pay you to do. We pay you to shoot the ball.
I still love that line, even though it's just so by the book. I mean, it's completely legal, and it still blows me away. I remember covering an SEC Media Days one time, and Mark Richt was in there, and there was a brief moment where you could talk about prospects, and the old NCAA rule was you could say, yes, we're recruiting him, or no, we're not. And that's all you could get from coaches. And I remember him looking at the sports information director, Claude Felton, and was like, are you sure I can talk about this guy? Are you sure I can? It's kind of that Rick Barnes comment made me feel the same way.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. And certainly we want and need Chaz to play better. We've got another tough stretch of games coming up where, tomorrow night, Missouri is no slouch, man. They're a really tough-nosed, really talented team. They're a lot like the team that they were 2 years ago. And, obviously last year was an anomaly for them going 0-18 in the league. But man, they're a lot like they were 2 years ago, where they're just tough at every position. They're going to guard you at 94 feet. They're going to play good, sound, solid basketball. So you play that team, and then you go on the road at Oklahoma, who they haven't had the best results, but still it's a challenge on the road, Norman, Oklahoma. And then, man, you got Kentucky again, you got Vandy again. So it's not anything easy, but we need Chaz to play better. We need all of our guys to play better. You know, you can't shoot much worse than 23%, man. At some point, you're going to have to knock those shots down. And if they're not going down, I hope and pray that we make the decision to drive the ball to the basket or get our big guy involved. Look, Felix Okpara made one of the best moves he's made all year long against Kentucky. One dribble, turned to the right, head and shoulders fake, got the guy in the air, and he made like a sweet little left-hand layup. We need more of that. Why can't we have more of that?
Beats me. Go ahead, Caleb.
Steve, to that point, interestingly enough, now Louisville turned out to be good and Illinois has turned out to be good, but this is not Rick Barnes' fault. He scheduled as tough as he possibly could in the offseason. It turned out, many of the teams that he scheduled turned out to not be as good as we thought they were going to be. Baylor, I'm looking at them more than anybody. So it also turned out that the SEC turned out to be way tougher than we thought it'd be, and it was already going to be the toughest conference in basketball this year. How much do you think maybe the schedule not being where they hoped it would be in the offseason maybe didn't adequately prepare them for the SEC right off the bat, and maybe that's why Chaz Lanier and maybe even Igor Milicic are taking a little bit longer to adjust to the SEC game?
I think you're spot on, Caleb. Simply, we talk about it all the time, but Coach Barnes loves to challenge his team, and particularly in the early season, even when you don't think that he is. And I'll give you a prime example. You bring in Montana. Well, people look at Montana and go, it's Montana. I mean, am I fired up to see Montana play? But Montana was picked to finish first in the Big Sky, right? So every particular game in which we play, especially early on in the season, there's a reason, there's a rhyme, there's rationale to go along with that, because more times than not, the teams that we play are expected to contend for their conference championships. Then you load in the Baylor, then you load in the Virginia, then you load in the Miami, and you think, man, these are going to be really good teams. Miami, just a few years ago, removed from being in the Final Four. Jim Larinaga, Hall of Fame coach. Well, guess what? He retires midseason, quits on his team, and then they just kind of tank. Virginia, you thought they'd be a defensive stalwart. They are, but they can't score. Then you look at Baylor. Baylor got taken advantage of on the inside and outside. And all of a sudden, you almost break your own arm patting yourself on the back. Hey, look at what we've done. Yeah, we beat Virginia, Baylor. We've beaten everybody that we needed to. And then you get to SEC play and you find out that, hey, those teams weren't very good, right? The only really, really good team that we played perhaps was Illinois in Champaign. And you were very fortunate to get out of there with a W. Even going back to the exhibition game, Caleb, Indiana, Indiana came in here and beat us on our home floor. Now, Coach Barnes tried some different lineups and did some things, but you thought, man, Indiana's really going to prep us. They're going to be a really good team. Are they? They're middle of the road in the Big Ten, not very good. So I think we took advantage and did the things that we had to do to win the games that we had to win. And then when the SEC gets here, you lose 4 out of your first 9 games. It happens.
Yep.
Yeah. No,
ahead,
I totally agree. Talking a little more X's and O's and ball, I do want to say the most positive I took, it's funny you brought his name up, from Tennessee's win over Florida on Saturday, because Florida, the defense was great, but I think Tennessee benefited from just sometimes teams shoot really, really bad from 3. And Chaz Lanier answered the moment, but Felix Okpara stepping up offensively with Igor Milicic out seemed like a really big deal, since he can do some things physically under the basket that Milicic can't. How dominant can Tennessee be offensively at full strength if Felix continues to develop offensively like that for Tennessee?
He is I think Felix Okpara is the one guy that I look at and say, if he continues to get better, hear me out. If he continues to get better, we can make a deep run in March and April. If he's already at his ceiling for this year, I don't know how far we can go.
Steve,
I say that because Felix Okpara has all of the intangibles, right? Huge wingspan, great shot blocker, tremendous rebounder, The only thing left is him working on his craft in terms of being able to score the ball. But as far as I know, Caleb and Dave, you can't score if you don't have the ball. I mean, I think that's one of those written rules in basketball. You got to have the ball to score. And he doesn't get a whole lot of opportunities, save the rim running, right? The alley-oops, the dunks. But I really, really believe that if we make a concerted effort to get the ball on the interior and let him operate, let him go to work. He's got soft hands in terms of getting the shot up left or right. Let him go to work and score. I think it opens things up for Chaz. I think it opens things up for Zakai. I don't think we're taking forced threes, last second shot clock threes, which we get in trouble for all the time. And who knows? Maybe if Chaz gets, if Felix gets better and better, maybe he starts to command a double team, and then he kicks the ball, and we have wide open jumpers. But right now, guys, we don't have a guy in the post that even commands a double team. They look at him and go, no, I got him one-on-one. And that's not how the game needs to operate.
Let me ask you this, Steve, big picture question. I think more times than not, a football team gets worse through the season because of the physical toll that it takes on your body. Most of the time. I mean, sometimes you figure out an offense and it's different, or you figure out the defense and it's different. But you just talked about a couple of players that you need to improve during the season. Can you really improve that much during the season, or is there some of this stuff's going to take some off-season work?
I think you can improve during the season. I think, we talked about Chaz Lanier making adjustments to the way that he's being guarded. I think you can improve during the season. I was at practice with Tony White last week, the Wiz.
That was my first ever favorite basketball player.
He's still one of my favorites, man. I was sitting courtside at Pratt Pavilion with him, and we were just talking ball. We were just, I think the younger people say just chopping it up. That's what we're doing. We're talking ball. And after Zakai Ziegler was not in that particular practice, Bishop Boswell was running the point. The amount of growth that I saw in Bishop Boswell last week's practice versus just even a month ago was astronomically different. He had a much better command of the offense. His confidence was through the roof. He's dropping dimes, and he knocked down a really highly contested three-pointer. And you just see him brimming with confidence at that point. So I think you can get better throughout the duration of the season. Now, by and large, most of your game has to take off during the off season, during, May, June, and July. That's when you really got to, get better. But I think that people like Bishop Boswell, people like a Chaz Lanier, I think they can get much, much better. And I don't think, and I can't stress this enough, but I don't think that we've seen the best version of Chaz Lanier yet. I don't think we have.